So what is your favorite rocket? That's what I'm going to talk about in this video.
Welcome to Advanced Construction Videos, where we show you how to tackle rocketry, building techniques, and more. On our website, we sell kits, motors, building supplies, and electronics. So come and learn, shop, build, and fly when you visit us at apogeerockets.com.
Hi, I'm Tim Van Milligan from Apogee Components. I've been asked all the time, what's my favorite rocket? And my answer is pretty much the same every time. My actual favorite rocket is the next one. And you know what I'm talking about. You're always involved and you just dream about building that next one that's going to challenge you. But if I had to look back, what would my favorite one be? And it would probably be this one right here. This is the Nike Hercules. Now, let me tell you a little story about this and why it's my favorite. I first came across it in 1970 something when I had a Century catalog, and in there was just this little tiny illustration, and it was a line drawing of this rocket. And I said, man, that's cool. Why don't they make that one? But nobody ever did. So fast forward to probably about maybe 10 years ago. No, it's actually more than that. It was maybe closer to 20 years ago when the Dynastar brand of rockets was just coming out. And I had to pick a nose cone for those rockets. And I said, well, eventually one day I want to do a Nike Hercules. So I designed the Dynastar rockets around the nose cone for a Nike Hercules. Now those rockets were BT-70, so that nose cone was about 2.2 inches in diameter. And I did get around to building one, and this was probably around the late 20-teens. I built one using that nose cone, and I flew it, and it crashed. But then forward again to like around 2023, when we had Martin McKee here as our product designer. And I told Martin, I said, I want to do a Nike Hercules. And I showed him the nose cone and everything was going along fine. And then one day he comes back and he says, Tim, why don't we make this bigger so that people can make it really impressive and fly it with big motors? Because if you're not flying with big motors, it's just not the same. So he redesigned it, and so all that work I put into creating that BT-70 size nose cone, we didn't use that same nose cone here. So we redesigned it around a 3-inch diameter nose cone. So that's what this is, the 3-inch diameter nose cone. And then we have some other rockets that use the 3-inch diameter nose cone, like the Catalyst and the Mako and the Kronos. Those also use the same nose cone. So we started with the nose cone, but the most complex piece in this rocket is right here in the middle. And it's this funky looking transition where it goes from a cluster of 4 rockets to a single one in the top. So when we were talking about doing this, the question was, do we want to do it as a single stage or a 2-stage? And I said, no questions asked. It's got to be 2-stage because I want it to fly like the real Nike Hercules. The real one, and this is a scale model, was a surface-to-air missile designed to take out a swarm of nuclear bombers from the Soviet Union. So imagine yourself in the early 1950s when you're starting to think about future wars and you're the U.S. Army. So coming off of World War II, the way we attacked the enemy was to fly swarms of bombers into their country, thousands of bombers at a time. So we thought in future wars that would be the same strategy where Russia would send in swarms of bombers. So how do you take out a fleet of bombers? Well, you can't shoot them down one at a time because if there's thousands of them, if just one of them gets through with a nuclear bomb, it's game over. So the philosophy at the time was, well, hey, let's put a surface-to-air missile and let's put a nuclear bomb in the top. And so when it gets into the swarm of bombers, you just set off one bomb and it takes out the entire fleet. And so that was the purpose of the Nike Hercules. It was a nuclear-tipped surface-to-air missile. Well, then they got to thinking about this after they had made it, and they thought about it long and hard, and they discovered that it does just as much damage to our country as it does to the bomber fleet. And so then they said, well, this is not so good of an idea to set off a nuclear bomb over your country just to take out bombers. So then they decommissioned it, and that's where we get today's Patriot and THAAD missiles from, is we don't want to put up a nuclear bomb. But this is the rocket that they made, and they had to make it two-stage, and they had to make it go very fast. So what they did was they took Nike missiles and they strapped 4 of them together, and that created the booster stage. And then the upper stage, they created a new one called the Hercules, and this is a 2-stage rocket. The problem with this rocket is it's very unstable. You have so much forward fin here on this rocket that this upper stage is pretty much unstable unless you put a lot of nose weight in it. And so if you pick this up, you'll notice that it balances pretty far forward, because we did have to put a lot of nose weight in it. And then we did some other tricks on this rocket. These fins here on the back, they're actually canted about 2 degrees, so that causes the rocket to spin. And like a bullet, if you spin a bullet, it goes nice and straight. So that's what we had to do on this rocket. It's like I said, it's very complex. There's 20 individual fins that you have to make to put this together. And it's also a cluster of 4 motors in the bottom, 1 in the top. But as you can see, it's got a solid bulkhead here inside, so you can't stage it like you would with an Estes motor. So we had to design this thing from the start to use electronic staging in the upper stage. So electronic staging means you're bringing along with you on the ride up into the sky a controller. And we're going to put the controller inside the rocket. And that's what this is. This is our electronics bay, where we're going to put a controller, and there will be an igniter that goes down through the middle, and it goes up into the nozzle of the motor here. And so it's completely independent of the bottom stage. And then on the bottom stage, as I said, it is a cluster. And then on this one, you say, well, where are you going to put the parachute? Otherwise, this thing's going to crash. Well, what we had to do is we had to put the parachute in one of the tubes that goes inside here. So you can see it's got a heat shield that goes in there. You got the shock cord that goes in there. And then you got to stuff a parachute, and you got to wrap this thing up really tight, because you can see there's not a lot of room. And this is a big parachute. This is a 24-inch diameter parachute that goes inside. And then, as you can see, it's kind of staggered. There's actually, let's see, 2 motors. Any 2 motors on the side, like this one here and the one on the opposite side, can push off this, I don't know what you call it, this transition. It's kind of like a nose cone, because it acts like a nose cone because it has the parachute that's attached to it. So 2 of the motors will push it off, and the other 2 are actually vented. So you can't see this in here, but there's a hole on the side. So the ejection charge goes through the slot and out the side, so that it vents 2 of the motors, and then 2 of them will actually push it off. And we did that for redundancy, and we didn't want 4 motors blowing this off, because that would have been like shooting a bullet out of a rocket. So the reason I like this rocket is because of the complexity. You got a lot going on here, and a lot has to work right the first time. And that's what I really wanted to talk about in this episode is how do you make sure that everything actually works the way you intend. And so this rocket, and this is what I recommend you do for any complex project, is to create a checklist. Now this is a 2.5-page checklist because it's printed on both sides. And it walks me through step by step how to prepare this rocket for launch, just to make sure that I don't forget anything. So in the video that I'm going to show you, at the very beginning, you'll hear the PA announcer announce, like, I hope it works this time.
Let's hope it stages this time.
And that's because the first time that we launched this particular rocket, I forgot to do something. And it's been so long, I forgot what it was that didn't work. But the rocket did survive. And I've launched this one maybe 3 or 4 times. But it does have some battle damage. I've had 3 of the fins break, and I've glued them back on. So they're nice and stiff again. It's just cosmetic. It just doesn't look as nice. I built 2 of these rockets for myself, one to fly, and then one is here in our showroom at Apogee Components. And if you actually come here, you'll see it there in the showroom. Martin, the designer of the rocket, he built like 3 or 4 different ones, and we launched it in all kinds of configurations. We launched it as a cluster of 2, a cluster of 4. We actually built a version, and there's plans in our newsletter for a version that's a single stage. Like, how do you do this as a single stage? Because now you do want the ejection charge to go through all the way and pop the nose cone off here on the upper stage. Speaking of that, here on the top, you'll see that if I line it up here with the electronics bay, if I take that off, you'll see the electronics bay goes all the way up to here, and the shoulder comes all the way down to there, so there's only no room for the parachute. So we had to design this, so we cut off the bottom of the nose cone and then shove the nose cone up inside the nose cone, the parachute up inside the nose cone, so that there's room enough to get everything so it is a complete rocket. We've flown this one as a single stage, just like this. I wouldn't recommend it. Like I said, it's like marginally stable. The reason that it becomes nice and stable is because we have the velocity of the rocket from the booster stage. So that's what gets it going straight. And then when it stages, it's already got a lot of speed, and that speed is what keeps it straight. But when you're just launching it from 0 velocity, it's a little squirrely. So again, I always recommend, if you're doing a complex rocket, to create a checklist. Now, if you want this particular checklist, I've uploaded it to our website on the Nike Hercules page. So if you go to the Nike Hercules page, at the very top, right below the price, which will shock you, is some downloads. Like, there'll be an instruction book, and I'll also have this checklist in there so that you can have that. So this is my favorite rocket, and it's the Nike Hercules. You'll find it here at Apogee. Like I said, it's not an inexpensive rocket. It's for those people that really want something in quality, and then something that's a little bit more complex that you're not going to see anybody else on the range have. Because most people, they're too afraid to fly this. I hope that you're not. Like I said, we have videos on how to build this and fly this. Plus we have the checklist to walk you through it. We're going to try to give you as much confidence as possible so that you can fly this rocket too. And then when you do it, send us the video, because we've already had videos come in and we link to them on our website because we love seeing your rockets fly. So my name again is Tim Van Milligan. This is the Apogee Rocketry Workshop. May the winds be light, may the skies be blue, and may all your rockets fly straight and true.